The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to our IFES webinar series. And we're excited to have with us today Dr. Lisa Looney on a very important topic of concern to everybody. And so the topic here is game changer, women recognizing tech-based degrees as broad, fit for the future, and a place that they would be comfortable. Dr. Lisa Looney is the Executive Dean of the Faculty of Engineering and Computing in Dublin City University at Ireland. And just a quick brief on her background. She is a member of the senior management group of the university, obviously, and then her disciplinary background is mechanical engineering. She undertook PhD in Netherlands and also works as a researcher in New Zealand. Her research expertise includes materials processing, particularly biomaterials. She has a strong publication record and a very experienced doctoral supervisor research examiner. Lisa was the Dean of Graduate Studies in DCU from 2011 to 16, during which time she was active in European Universities, Association Council for Direct Doctoral Education, and took a leadership role in drafting the Irish National Framework for Doctoral Education. So we have with us a very experienced, seasoned professional. So it's over to you, Lisa. I'm going to make you the presenter. Okay, and I can just click show my screen and you will be on.
Okay, thank you, Krishna.
Sure.
Thank you, and I hope everybody can hear me clearly.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Okay, I appreciate the introduction and thank you very much for the invitation to contribute to this webinar series. I've prepared a number of slides relating to the topic that I want to talk about, and I guess at the end we'll have an opportunity to have some chat, maybe if you have some questions. I'm smiling at the idea of being introduced as a seasoned professional. We always like to think we're younger than we are, but I guess with the number of years I have under my belt at this stage, I probably justify that description. What I'd like to do is maybe start with just a little bit of an introduction, because I'm conscious that this is a global webinar and people may not know that much about Ireland, may not know that much about the institution that I work at, or our faculty, and it's important as a context, I suppose, for the points that I want to make. So Ireland is a little country on the edge of Europe, so we're part of the European Union. We have under 5 million of a population, and that population has changed quite significantly in the last 15 or 20 years. We have, I think, around 15% of our people now who have come to Ireland from abroad, which is a very new thing for us. So it's becoming a more diverse society than it would have been. We, along with many other countries, were subject to the economic shock that traveled around the world in 2008, and essentially our economy crashed is probably the best way to describe what happened. But the good news is we have recovered very well from that crash. We're back up to almost full employment. And in terms of engineering, we now have a thriving ICT sector. Pharmaceuticals are very strong. Areas like biomedical engineering are very strong. So the country is doing quite well. We are, or will be after Brexit, the largest English-speaking country in the European Union, which has obviously positives for us, but negatives in relation to us. And the United Kingdom as being our largest trading partner. So we are looking forward with, I suppose, some concern about the economic well-being in the next few years. We have a very educated population. So the school system in Ireland is very strong. Teaching is considered a really important job. Some of our brightest kids go on to be school teachers. And we have a very high transfer rate of students from secondary school into universities. So as far as I know, across Europe, we have the highest proportion of people between mid-20s, mid-30s with a third level qualification, mostly with a bachelor's degree. And that's one of the reasons that global multinational companies situate themselves in Ireland. So as an engineering educator, I suppose we see ourselves as part of that ecosystem, part of a direct link to the quality and the health of the Irish economy. At the moment, we have, there's a number of indicators on your screen there, 9 of the 10 top global software companies have a base in Ireland. 9 of the 10 of the top 10 pharmaceutical companies in the world are based in Ireland. You get the idea here. We've 9 of the 10 top ICT companies. So our foreign direct investment policy has been quite successful. So the engineering environment in Ireland is dominated by those, I suppose, the culture, the work practices of those global multinationals. But for every foreign direct investment company job that's created in Ireland, we reckon there's about 8 jobs that are created in indigenous SMEs. So as educators of engineers, we're very conscious they're going into a mix of organizations. So it may be quite a small SME, but it's probably one that interacts with a global multinational. We have been ranked by Forbes as being in the top 10 most innovative countries in the world, which is obviously music to the ears of any engineering educator. There's very strong, coherent government policy behind improving and continuing to improve our innovation ecosystem. And you'll see there some of the activities that they've identified, that we've identified nationally as being really important. So some of you with a background similar to mine will look in there on things like 3D printing, robotics, but equally computing is quite strong, and computer engineering is a really important piece of our, I suppose, intellectual infrastructure in Ireland. And we've been investing heavily in things like data analytics and artificial intelligence as part of the, I suppose, the approach to making our economy very robust. So that's Ireland. It's also a very beautiful place. So if you've never been to visit it, can I extend an invitation? We have the most wonderful scenery and the most wonderful culture. Please do visit if you get an opportunity. So in that context, the university I work is called Dublin City University. We're a young university, so we have our 40th birthday next year. We're planning for that at the moment. And we're ranked in the top 100 of young universities globally in the Times Higher ranking. So the rankings have their faults, but I suppose we include this in our slides because it does give an indication of how far we've come in a pretty short period of time. I'm conscious there are universities all over the world starting afresh, brand new universities developing. It can be very daunting to see how you can compete globally. And we feel we've done that. We're the fastest growing university in Ireland. We're situated in one of the fastest growing regions of Europe. So the region just north of Dublin is growing in terms of its demographics. So at the moment we've 17,000 students and increasing. In terms of the type of place we are, DCU is set up with a strong focus on enterprise. So most of our programs, and certainly all of the programs in my faculty, have an industrial placement as part of the degree program. So usually it's in 3rd year, and it ranges from 8 months to 12 months depending on the program. So if you ask people in Ireland about DCU, they will know about that focus on enterprise and employment-ready graduates. We're an ambitious university, and I can say that because I've worked here a long time. We're very agile, we're very open to opportunities. It's not a place where people say to you, oh, we can't do that, or we tried that before. There's a lot of ambition here for growth and for continued excellence. It's research intensive, so we have about 800 PhD students at the moment, I think, and that's a number that's growing. And we have a strong emphasis on equality and educational opportunity. So we would have the longest established and largest access program of any university in Ireland. So it means that our students come from quite a broad mix of socioeconomic backgrounds. Unfortunately, we don't get as many of those students as I'd like into engineering, and that's often because they haven't had the opportunity to develop the math skills they might need. But across the university, we do really well in terms of access. We also, and it's worth mentioning just in a conversation about education, have one of the largest faculties of education in Europe. So we have over 4,000 students in one of our faculties, which is called the DCU Institute of Education. It's a relatively new addition to the university. We incorporated a number of colleges of education over the last few years. But it's important because I suppose as engineering educators, it has brought to within DCU a range of expertise around how to teach, to go with our particular expertise about how to teach our discipline. And that's beginning to bear fruits in terms of a number of partnerships between individuals. But equally, as I look to the future, I think it's going to be key in terms of how we develop all of our teaching in the university. And just some sense of the faculty that I head up, we have about 2,000 students across undergraduate, postgrad taught and postgrad research students. We have accredited bachelor's programs, so these would be, they're part of the Washington Accord through Engineers Ireland, so equivalent to ABET accreditation in the USA, in mechatronics engineering, mechanical manufacturing engineering, electronic and computer engineering, and biomedical engineering. And we operate a common entry to those, so school leavers can decide to do a specific one of those, or they can just say, I just want to do engineering in first year and then I'll decide afterwards. So we try and be flexible around that. We also have bachelor's programs in computing, computing with business, which we call enterprise computing, and a new program in data science where we haven't had our first graduates yet, but it's a growing area. At master's level, we have programs in things like advanced manufacturing, Internet of Things, software, data analytics, artificial intelligence. You can see our offerings probably mirror the types of industries that I talked about as being key in Ireland. And probably worth mentioning, we're members of the European Society for Engineering Education, which is one of the member societies of your association. Just some photos here. So we do a lot in outreach. So the top left-hand side of the screen there is our Compute TY program. So we run week-long programs for students who are about 15, 16 years old. And we teach them either programming or web design or sometimes robotics. So to give them an insight into what engineering is about. And that's at a stage before they have to pick their subjects for their senior cycle at secondary school. We have a strong emphasis on trying to get girls into that program. The photo on the right there, I'm on the left-hand side of it with the DCU president and our Minister for Higher Education. And that was us launching in one of our new masters online. So as of next September, we'll be running 3 masters online. And those are interesting because they're industry-led. The development work was funded by industry organizations, but they worked very closely with our research centers and our research leaders in the relevant areas to develop these particular master's programs. And those will be offered to people who are working in the member companies in the first instance, but in years to come, we will offer those more broadly and globally. And just one other piece of news that was important for us in 2019, we got a lot of funding for new centres for doctoral training. So we'll be ramping up to about 120 doctoral students across the 4 areas that are linked there, starting from this September. So if any of you have bright engineering minds who are looking to come to Ireland to do a PhD, I think all of my colleagues are recruiting PhD students at the moment. So I think Krishna has kind of covered off about me. I've been involved in engineering education for a long time. I've had an interest in the number of women in engineering, or the lack of number of women in engineering, for a long time. And I suppose I got to a point in my career where I'm looking back and thinking we need to do something differently. So back to the topic that I was due to be talking about. And I'm proposing that we need to add something into the mix of what we've already been doing in order to turn the dial, if you like, on the number of women in engineering or technology-based degrees, is how I frame it, because that encompasses computing for me. And I want to give you a bit of background as to what's happened in Ireland, because I know there are parts of the world where this is quite different and there are cultural factors at play here. So, you know, the background may not fit in every country. But in Ireland, we've had concern about the take-up of STEM degrees, STEM subjects at secondary school for a long time. And the most recent report that was done for the government was this one on STEM education in the Irish school system, because obviously if young girls are not interested in science and technology by the time they get to be 18 or 19, they're definitely not going to be interested in science or technology. And an awful lot has been going on. So if you look back over the last 30 years, there's been a huge amount of work has gone into trying to explain to young girls, to their moms and dads, their teachers, about how exciting science-based degrees can be, really trying to get across to them the impact that those degrees have on people's quality of life, and tapping into this idea that girls are maybe quite interested in helping people and having an impact on the environment and that type of thing. But if you look at the statistics for Ireland here, and the most recent dates I have, the breakdown of gender for, show that essentially we've plateaued in terms of participation by females in our ICT or engineering courses. So it's around 20% in the universities, if you average across those two. And it's been that for quite a while. So, you know, I studied engineering in the mid-1980s. it was probably about 11, 12% then. It grew to about 18% over the 80s and early 90s, and it's pretty much plateaued there. There are pockets where you'll find higher numbers of young women, so our biomedical engineering degree would be an example of that. But if you look across the sector largely, we, despite all of the work, have not managed to shift the dial, which is why I'm proposing that there's something missing. There's something we're not doing yet. One thing we did in Ireland was to look at maths attainment, because obviously maths capability is an underpinning competence for something like engineering. And if you look back at my graph here, the blue one back to 2010, 2011, only about 15% of our school leavers took the higher level mathematics curriculum. So at age 17 or 18, only 15% of kids were picking the toughest maths courses. And that was largely, I think, because there was a perception that they required a lot more time than some other subjects. Our school leavers take 7 different subjects. So if you take a difficult maths course, the perception is that some of the other subjects might suffer because of that. And we have an integrated system for getting into university. So all of the universities are involved, and students apply according to the points overall they get in their leaving cert examinations. So we began to manipulate that system and added bonus points for maths. So we kind of recognized that maths was a key competency and that we needed to incentivize people to take maths. And you can see on that blue chart there that very quickly students responded, and we now are up at about over 30% of our school leavers who take the higher maths curriculum. And that's wonderful, because it means we now have a pool of young people who are well armed to go into technology-based degrees. And the even better news is that over that time frame, we have not lost the women that were doing it, but they have also moved into higher mathematics. So, you know, we're close on half and half representation of those young people who are taking higher maths. And you'd expect that we would have seen an impact then in terms of the number of people looking to technology-based degrees. But unfortunately, we haven't. So they've done the maths. They now have the basis to take those types of degrees, but the girls aren't moving towards us in any higher numbers than they were previously. The other thing that's been happening in Ireland, I suppose, is that there's a very vibrant, informal structure of initiatives around encouraging all sorts of kids towards engineering. So we have various Coolest projects, we have Coder Dojo, which is a coding club, we have competitions, exhibitions, and a lot of those are actually focused particularly on girls. So we have organisations like I Wish, Engineers Ireland are very active, BT are a very active organisation, and there are a number of others. There are lots of people analysing what's been going on, so I could wallpaper my office with reports about what's happening in terms of gender balance in STEM and what's not happening in terms of gender balance in STEM. So it's not for lack of people thinking about this issue or people being active. And actually industry is very active in Ireland in supporting initiatives related to trying to encourage more women into science and engineering areas. And I'm proposing, I suppose, that there's a flaw in our thinking to date, and I'm basing this largely on my experience in the classroom with the engineers that we have. If you look at the engineering cohort at a university, so we've about 20% female. And there's kind of this idea of the missing young women, those people who we haven't convinced about how exciting and interesting engineering is, and if only they knew, then they would have picked it. And there's a lot of work done to try and increase the number of young women who think just like those ones who did pick engineering. So there's this kind of an idea that if we just had more who were as excited and interested and focused on becoming engineers, then they would pick it, and we could increase the number of girls in the classroom. But if you look at the young men in the classrooms, I reckon there's about 20% of those who are very focused, who've researched really well what they want to do, understand the profession that they're joining, and pretty much mirror the girls who are in the class. But there's an awful lot of other young men in the classroom who are present. They've picked the course, they've arrived and they're studying, they're doing fine, but they're not really like that top 20% in terms of motivation and understanding. They are not sure they want to be engineers, actually. They're not sure what they want to do with their life later. But they don't have any confidence gap that engineering is something they could do. So, you know, when they were looking down the list of possible options and they mentioned engineering, they were probably met with a lot of nodding heads in their family and people saying, oh yeah, that'd be a good idea for you. And they weren't afraid of taking it on. So they're supported in a way by a positively gender biased view of their own competence in relation to something like engineering or computer engineering. And they also largely have a higher tolerance of risk. So they're not as concerned as many girls leaving school are about getting the wrong answer or being shown up by not knowing everything. And equally, if they come from a family that doesn't have a lot of science capital, so maybe mom and dad don't know much about science, it's quite likely that nonetheless mom and dad would be supportive of them picking an engineering option. And what I think is that we have actually a missing cohort of girls who are not like the 20% who turn up, but who are actually more like those boys. And what we want is for those to pick engineering because they don't know what they want to do, despite the fact that there is a confidence gap in terms of their ability to do it, despite the fact that there may be a negative gender bias in their case in relation to their competence to pursue the course, and despite potentially a perceived high risk of this course, and despite the fact they may come from a family where there's low science capital. So what I'm proposing, I guess, is that you can only get a certain proportion of young women excited enough about engineering to be absolutely sure it's what they want to do. But that's not the mix that we have across boys. Across young men, we have a much greater mix. Many of them are very unsure and they pick engineering anyway. We need to try and encourage young girls who are very unsure but pick engineering anyway. And I suppose that involves recognizing that most 18-year-olds don't know what job they want to get or what profession they want to pursue. We see that in our statistics in Ireland. Most popular courses are things like business or arts and humanities. Those are broad-based courses where people are deferring for a number of years the option as to what particular job that they're going to go into. So my proposal is that we need to reframe engineering a little bit, because we push a lot the idea that it's a profession. There's actually a lot of our status wrapped up in the fact that it is a profession and a very specific role and job that one would do. But I think if you're talking to people who are 16, 17, 18 years of age and are not at all sure about what job they want to do, it's important that we explain to them that engineering is a multi-opportunity degree. And upon it, you could build any sort of career, particularly given what the future is bringing in terms of a dependence on technology. And if you think back, business did this quite successfully. So in the early days of business, you were going to become an accountant, or you were going to become a HR specialist. And it was sometime later that this idea of a broad business degree happened, and students flocked to business as a general broad degree, and there are hundreds of thousands all over Europe. So I suppose what I'm proposing is that we consider reframing our degrees and getting that message across that actually it's the type of background that could take you anywhere. Because I propose that young men seem to understand this better than young women do at the moment, certainly in Ireland and certainly in my experience. My second descriptor, I suppose, for the point that I'm making is that the degrees need to be reframed as being fit for the future. And we need to do a lot of work about how perceptions might be changed around where the opportunity lies for young men and women in choosing their courses. We know that the future of work is changing. And if your country is anywhere like mine, there have been conferences and meetings and reports and scaremongering and lots going on about how we're all going to live much longer and artificial intelligence is going to change everything. And some of that's very helpful, and some of it is important to be heard, I suppose. What is, I suppose, undenied is that careers of the future are going to change, and they are going to be technology infused, they're going to be technology enhanced, or they're going to be technology enabled. And if engineering was a degree program that could take you anywhere in the past, that is absolutely even more true now as we look to the future, because a technology background and understanding of data and understanding of systems and understanding of being able to analyze and move from the big picture to the small level detail, and to do deep dives, all of those characteristics are going to be so important in every single career, no matter what area it is in. And I think that many young girls, their parents and their teachers are poorly informed and have a perception of opportunity that is actually not the full picture. And they don't understand that a background in technology will open doors that they simply would not have access to in any other way. And that the proportion of opportunities through which you will need to go through that kind of a door are only going to increase. In order to address this, colleagues in the university here have begun to try and get the message out. This is an example of a booklet that we did to give to guidance counsellors at school level and to make available to parents and to students about how science, technology and engineering are transforming the careers of the future. So it's a little booklet. I've put the URL there in case anybody wants to have a look at it. But it's not specifically aimed at girls, but you'll see there's a lot of positive female role models scattered throughout. So we are trying to get the message across. But really the main message is to say a technology-based degree will open the door for you to many, many careers. And it is through that door that the opportunities of the future lie. The last phrase that I used was about young women feeling more comfortable in this particular degrees, and I don't mean to imply that those women who pick engineering are made to feel in any way uncomfortable in the courses when they pick them, but I do think that there are a lot of girls who look at engineering and just don't feel like it's for them, and I think that's more about perception of risk than it is about the culture of or the environment that the teaching happens in. I don't know if many of you may have seen that there's a video doing the rounds about how we teach our girls to be good and we teach our boys to be brave. And I think we could probably do more about teaching our girls to be brave and to be happy to get things wrong and to learn from that and to try again, because engineering is all about that. It's all about having an open mindset and being able to look at various options of solutions and evaluate them. But if you just want to be right all the time and be praised by the teacher, then that kind of activity is quite scary to you. And I think that rightly or wrongly or directly or indirectly, that message gets out to girls that the way we teach, what we teach, how we assess and how we reward is such that they would find that intimidating. And that's because maybe of the school system or the background that they've come from. And there's work to be done, both working with the girls themselves, but also within our teaching environments to address that. And one of the things we're doing in DCU, we've called the project Fiausú. So Fiausú is an Irish word, a Gaelic word, which means to make better. And we're tapping into some ideas that were developed in Olin College in the United States of this idea of 6 minds of an engineer. And while we have worked very hard to get and maintain accreditation, and will certainly continue to meet that standard, we're beginning to look at our culture in terms of how we teach and how we show continuity, I guess, from the first year through to the 4th year of the program, and how we give balance in terms of the different aspects of the minds of an engineer that we're developing. So you might see there a mention of the mindful mind, and that doesn't mean mindfulness in the sense that it's currently understood in Ireland. It's more about being deliberate about mindset, and I'm talking specifically about learning mindset in this case. Some of you may be familiar with the work of Carl Dweck around learning mindset, and I do believe that only an open learning mindset is compatible with engineering. So we're beginning to be quite open with the students and with each other as educators, I guess, around things like the learning culture, the learning mindset, learner behaviors, and how all that fits into inclusiveness and both young women and young men feeling involved, comfortable, and developing in the context of the programs that we're offering them. So that's something I hope to talk more about at the upcoming conference in November. So I kind of notionally have put together some posters here that I think we might begin to look at putting into some Irish schools and to try and challenge young girls. And I guess they kind of capture what I'm trying to say here, is that we should be saying to our young women that the opportunity in the future will overwhelmingly be technology enhanced, enabled, and technology relevant. And the best way to take the risk out of their career is to arm themselves with a technology-based degree, and it will reduce their career risk. Essentially, the message is this is the best thing you could do for yourself, given the future that we're facing. And the little add-on here about you don't have to be a genius is that well-documented sense of imposter syndrome that a lot of girls suffer from. I mentioned earlier that they do very well in higher level maths, but for some reason they don't seem to perceive that that arms them enough to take on an engineering degree. And I'm all for directly challenging some of the things that might be going on in people's heads as to why they wouldn't pick such a degree. You know, girls might be worrying it's too hard, but there's no data to show that they would find it that it's too risky. But again, there's no data to back that up. Issues like perfectionism are the enemy of young women as they head out of secondary school and into third level. And again, we just need to call that out and challenge it. And the final one there, but I couldn't find it interesting. That's the one that we've been focusing on, I suppose, as promoters of engineering degrees, but mainly only that. And I think it's part of the mix, but it's not enough, and it's not enough to change the dial or be the game changer, if you like. So that was really what I wanted to cover. I'm not really sure, Krishna, whether I did about a half an hour there. I'm not sure if that's what you'd planned, because it's the first time I've done one of these.
Okay. No, that's great, terrific. So let's engage in a little conversation here, and I'd like participants to jump in and send a text message. I'm going to kind of put a few people on the spot, see if they have any comments to make. Some people that are recognized in the audience, and I think let's see. I don't know if let's see. I don't know. Bill doesn't seem to have his microphone on. Bill Williams from Portugal. I don't know if doesn't have a microphone on. Let's see if anybody has any comments, questions coming up. Let's go to perhaps anybody have any comments, questions? How about the gentleman Michael Perrier from Canada? Would you have any comments to make on this issue, Michael? I can unmute you if you wish to chat a little bit. Yeah, Michael, Mindy, a few others around. If you're in the mood for it, I can unmute you or check. Let's see. In the mood for questions, Michael, comments, Mindy. Let's see. Anybody else? How about Divya Nalla? Do you want to make any comments here, Divya, from India?
No.
No.
No comments as of now.
You don't want to. I've unmuted you. Do you want to talk, Divya?
No, I don't have anything to say.
Okay. Let's see. We'll wait for a bit. See what.
I'd be interested to know whether this is an issue in other countries, India, right? Whether it's the same issues. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let's ask that question, since we do have quite a few from India. I think I know, having spent my life in the US, I know it's a big issue in the United States, but I'd like to see from the Indian perspective, is this an issue or not, and so on. Let's see if anybody from, let's see, Ajit Shukla, would you like to comment on that? Is this an issue in India, this kind of women issue? Ajit, you want to jump in?
People are shy.
Anybody want to just say yes, raise your hand and want to comment? Ajit, I've unmuted you if you want to do that, something like that. Let's see, who else would like to get a chance to chat? Looks like we got a whole bunch of shy people today. Huh. Jorge, how about Mexico? You have any problems like this in Mexico, Jorge? Oh. Okay. Let's see, questions that come in. I think Ajit, let's see, is that what, okay. One Yadaguni Srinivas has said, what are the opportunities we have for women in doctoral programs? How do you see that?
Well, in Ireland, the number of women is actually higher, the proportion of women is higher in doctoral programs than it is at undergraduate level. And that's because we recruit doctoral students from all over the world. So we benefit from countries where there are higher numbers of women coming through the undergraduate programs. Now it's still about 30%. It's not half and half or anything like that. So I think the transference from undergrad or masters into doctoral programs is quite good. The issue that I see here, we have about half of our staff are research staff. So we have a lot of postdoctoral researchers, research fellows, and in Ireland, a lot of investment is going into doctoral programs with a view to those graduates working in industry rather than working in academia. That transition is happening quite well, but I do see that I think a high proportion of the women get stuck in that postdoctoral phase. So they get their first postdoctoral position and they might be in their late 20s, early 30s. They get a second one, they're getting to their mid-30s and they might be beginning to think about having a family. And they don't have security of tenure, either in the private sector or in the university sector. And I see a lot of them leaving engineering, leaving science, and becoming research support officers, research administrators, research policy developers, but they're getting out of being researchers. And it seems to be just that stage of life that they're at and the particular career trajectory and the lack of security that happens in that phase just post-doctoral work. And that's where we're losing a lot of women. Krishna, I'm just checking you're still there.
Well, yeah, there are more questions have come in. I'm sorry, I got muted by mistake. So yeah, the next question was about this mindset, 656 mindset. What you had a slide on there,
yeah,
which had the mindset. Yeah, this one here. Yeah, tell us a little bit more about this.
So this is work that came out of Olin College, which is some people may be familiar with it. It's just outside Boston in the United States, and it's a college that was set up specifically to look at engineering education. I visited a number of times, and some of my colleagues have gone there. And there's a book called A Whole New Engineer, which is what this is taken from. And I suppose that the premise really of it is that we need to teach in a different way in order for learners to behave in a particular way. And it's about getting away from the chalk and talk approach, the didactic approach, to a much more kind of coach on the sideline approach. But equally, they emphasize a lot the importance of culture, the learning culture in a particular institution. So what we're trying to develop in our FIASU project is to look at each of these 6 minds. And one of the things in curriculum design that can happen when you get a whole lot of engineers together is that there's a primacy around that analytical thinking piece, the one that's at the bottom part there of the graphic. We all know what we mean about that. We all know about the exercises the mental exercises we put the students through as they go from first year through to fourth year. And there's a huge amount of rigor applied to developing analytical skills of the engineer. What's often not the case is that same level of rigor is not necessarily applied to developing the other 5 minds that are up there. So we teach design, we tend to teach it in quite a particular way, and I think there are huge possibilities to work in an interdisciplinary way to develop the design mind. What we're working on is a number of sets of frameworks of competency levels for each of these minds, and of course the analytical one is easy because people filled it in with what we already have on the course here. But if you take something like the linguistic mind, the simplistic approach to engineering education is you talk about communication skills, and then people talk about PowerPoint presentations or doing the type of thing I'm trying to do now, but it's so much more broad and more deep than this. if you think of it as a linguistic mind and all the things that relate to that, it's about performing through natural language. And that includes reading, it includes writing, speaking, listening, but also higher level skills such as negotiating, convincing, arguing. Excuse me. And what we're trying to get away from is an approach whereby, you know, communication involves, let's say, PowerPoints and reports, but that the students get caught in a kind of a loop whereby they're doing a bit of, you know, presenting and a bit of writing reports in first year and second year and third year and fourth year, but they're not really moving up the value chain in terms of that particular dimension of their ability as an engineer. And what we're trying to do is develop a framework to be much more rigorous about how we develop those skills and more connected across the curriculum. So rather than leaving it as, you know, somebody teaching applied mechanics might be looking for a report, and somebody doing fluid mechanics might be looking for a report, and somebody doing something else. And they might all ask for the same thing and not actually correlate how the standard they're looking for, how they're assessing that. And it may not be progressing very much between second year and third year, for example. So for each of these minds, we're kind of deconstructing the course and looking at each of those, developing competency frameworks and developing, I suppose, a partnership with the students about mastering these particular minds. And it's making them more partners in the learning rather than us handing down nuggets of knowledge that we have to them. Because in an age where information and facts are available at their fingertips, you know, they just look up what they need to know when they need to know it, or how to do a particular equation or calculation. We need to think differently about what it is they need to know at the end of their degree program, their bachelor's program in engineering.
Okay, let me check. Mindy, you had a couple of comments. Would you like to just ask them yourself, or should I read them out? I've unmuted you. Want to jump in? Or I can read them out if you prefer that. You've said the, let's see, Mindy says, fascinating presentation. Please say more about the bonus for students in secondary school to take higher math. What was the bonus?
Oh, okay. So in secondary school, our students take about 7 subjects. So most kids take Irish, which is our native traditional language, Irish, English, mathematics. Usually they take a foreign language like French or German or Spanish or something like that. And then they have 3 subjects that they pick. So, you know, somebody heading towards engineering might pick physics, maybe music, and maybe art or something like that, business perhaps. So they have 7 subjects, and in order to get into university, their 6 best subjects count, and every grade in a subject gives you a certain number of points. So if you get an A in a subject, it's so many points. If you get a B, if you get a C, if you get a D. So points are calculated for their 6 best subjects. So what we did with mathematics, because there was this perception that it took more time and effort than other subjects, is that we added a bonus points of 25 extra points at every grade for mathematics. So even if you just barely passed the higher course, because you got the bonus points, that was worth more than a very high performance in the lower level course. So what had been happening previously was kids who were quite able to do the higher level course were picking the easier course, doing well in it and getting points. But the difference between that and taking the higher course was marginal, so they didn't want to take the higher course. But now we made the difference significant. So it incentivized people to take the higher curriculum, even if you just thought you were going to pass it. You got those extra 25 points, and it made you more competitive for whatever university course that you wanted. Because we have this centralized system, if you take engineering in DCU, for example, we just got the data today. The 1st of July was the closed off date for applications for next year. So we now know how many kids have put engineering in DCU as their first choice. They're competing against one another. So when their exam results become known in the middle of August, the top collection of people will get the number of places available. So it's quite a competitive thing. So to have these bonus points in mathematics is a large incentive. But the problem was they were doing it for the points. They're not then realizing that they now have a really good background in maths, and it opens up new choices for them in terms of what they might do. So they're getting the extra points in maths, and then they're going off and doing business or law with it. That's a good thing from a population point of view, that we have more people who are better at maths, but it would be better if more of them realized it could open a door to engineering to them.
Now the comment from Mindy is, have you stressed the opportunity of engineers to work with community groups to design community desired solutions to problems in their communities, which that engineers can address with different types of approaches?
Yeah, we haven't yet, but it is something I'm going to look at. I think at the moment our emphasis is on things like the sustainability goals and the challenges around that. So the university does have a strong link to the community and a community research program. It's interesting, a lot of the projects that come in from the community are feasibility studies and the like. I did visit Arizona State University, where we have an institutional partnership with them last January, I think it was. And they were very involved in a number of community groups who came with technical challenges. So it is something that we're planning on integrating into our first year program in particular. What we're trying to do is
comment from Go ahead.
Now I was going to say, one of the things we're trying to do with our curriculum renewal is not change bits here and there. We're actually trying to get an integrated kind of overview and some principles across the whole of first year that we will then drive into the particular modules rather than tweaking things. So some changes I've held off on until we have the full plan developed in terms of our first year.
Okay, comment from Bhavsar Vishwesh says that you mentioned something about engineering has to be reframed. I think a little elaboration for that, please.
Yeah, so I think if you look at all that effort that's been going in the last 20 years in Ireland anyway on promoting careers and engineering, STEM careers, engineering careers, right? The emphasis has been on how exciting it is, how there are people who've done it. So you get this role model piece, you know, showing off women who've achieved in those areas. And there has been an effort to show how lives are changed. So, you know, the biomedical engineering one is very easy to talk about because immediately people see quality of life issues if you're working on new hip implants or new heart valves or what have you. But we've never really tried to adjust what it is we're selling here, right? So in terms of engineering, what we're selling here is a professional accredited program leading to a particular kind of job. So what we've been trying to do is show how exciting and interesting that job could be, but we've never actually opened it out and said, well, maybe you won't do that job, but maybe you'll take your engineering background and go into, I don't know, nursing later. Maybe you'll start a business. Maybe you'll teach. Maybe you'll, I don't know, one of those many hundreds of jobs we don't even know that exist yet. And I think as the world of work is changing and the degree of uncertainty about what the jobs are grows, that having just that one view of engineering as a professional qualification that heads you into a particular kind of a role is limiting, and it's not helping us in terms of trying to get more women into the courses. So that's what I mean by reframing it. So what we've tried to do to date is show how exciting and interesting the version of engineering that we followed is. And what I'm trying to propose is maybe not everybody is going to take their engineering degree and do that with it. Maybe they're going to do something else, particularly in the future we're facing into. And in the same way that doing an arts degree is a good thing to do, you know, for whatever you might do later, or a business degree is a good thing to do for whatever you might do later, engineering would be a good thing to do for whatever you might do later. I think boys get that, but girls don't.
Okay.
Not much.
Very practical question from one of the participants.
Yeah.
Are there opportunities for PhD for Indian students from India?
Yeah, we're expecting
university.
We're expecting to have great difficulty in filling all of these PhD program spaces. So just to give you a sense of it, the Irish government announced a scheme earlier this year. They've set up 7 centres for doctoral training. We are aiming, I think the €100 million was the overall investment, which is very significant on a global scale. We are not going to fill those PhD places with Irish people. We just won't have them. So the centres are all currently actively recruiting for students to start in September, but we will have scheme
Okay.
starting every September from now for the next 4 years.
All right, send in your applications, folks. Okay. Comment from Bill Williams. He's having problems with the mic, that's why he couldn't respond.
Oh, okay.
A welcoming environment for young women engineering. You've talked about how we can make it more attractive to girls and parents. What do you suggest to make civil and mechanical departments believe we need girls in these fields?
That's a very interesting question, and it goes back to this question of culture. I just went to the trouble at the beginning of the presentation to describe Ireland and our economic context, because the skills shortage in Ireland is a very real thing. And we are not graduating, like I could graduate twice the number of engineers I'm graduating, and they would go into jobs in Ireland. So there's a very, very strong industry imperative to increase the number of graduates in Ireland, and that translates very fast to anybody who looks out at a classroom that is an imperative to increase the number of females in our classrooms. So actually, I think in Ireland and in Dublin in particular, there's a very strong acceptance across the academic community that this is an issue. But I have worked in other places, and I know that it's not always, it's kind of seen as lip service to political correctness, and that there isn't really a belief necessarily that we're losing out in any way by not having as many women. That can be very difficult to challenge, and I've always been a bit afraid of the economic argument of basis for encouraging young women into classrooms, because as soon as the economy tanks, then people who think they shouldn't have been there in the first place kind of think, oh well, that's fine now, we don't have them here, and that's a good thing. For me, the way I look at it isn't so much about the industry demand, it's about the limitation not being in an engineering classroom puts on a particular girl. So we are not doing right by our young women by, in one way or another, whatever way we're doing it, unintentionally or whatever it is, societally, putting barriers between them and the amazing thing that a technology-based degree is. I've seen among my own colleagues, I think, as people have daughters of their own, they get a greater understanding of that side of it, the fact that, you know, they see potential in their own daughters and nieces, and see how the fact that they're not even thinking about engineering is limiting them. But I do accept it can be very difficult if you have a department where there's no female member of staff, or there's only one. It can actually be very difficult because people don't like change generally. And one of the things I'm conscious of is this talk is about women, but the data also indicates that probably people from the gay community are less likely to pick technology-based degrees. They feel they might be less welcome there. There's probably a lot of other dimensions to diversity, where if you look at an environment that looks to be largely male, is largely unwelcoming to a particular perspective. So I do hope that any of the things that we're doing here with a view to encouraging more girls into engineering will also encourage more kinds of people of all different types, different socioeconomic backgrounds, different sexual orientation, different career aspirations, just different, because it'll make it better.
How much specifically civil and mechanical? I think that's what Bill was talking about compared with other disciplines. Is there a different
there are different, and when I look at our programs, the difference between mechanical and biomedical is stark. So one year, I think we had 70% of the class were females in biomedical. And it's not that unusual in mechanical to have no girl. And if you think about the overlap, because the version of biomedical that we teach is quite heavily design orientated, the overlap in terms of what they're learning is very significant. But the difference is their perception of what you do with that degree. And the biomedical ones, they can see immediately there's an impact. So how do you get them to see that mechanical also has an impact? I don't know if that's a battle that can be won. I actually think the fight we should be fighting is to say, do a mechanical degree because you really will understand systems if you do. And understanding systems is going to make you ready for whatever job you're going to do afterwards. So that's kind of my point, is that we're not going to turn a whole load of more girls into people who want to be mechanical engineers. But we might be able to sell mechanical engineering in a different way in terms of what it teaches you to be able to do. And you know, for those of us who love the fluid mechanics and the mechanics and everything that goes into creating a mechanical engineer, that's difficult because we're used to, you know, wanting to produce engineers. But it should also be okay if we invite people into these courses or encourage them into these courses with a view saying, you know, we understand you may not do that with this degree later, but the way you will think and the way you will problem solve and the way you will approach data and systems at the end of this course will arm you for whatever career that you decide to go into or whatever sector you decide to go into.
Okay, great. We need to switch gears for a couple of minutes. We're going to run out of time soon. I'm going to take over the presentation because I need to do a little bit of a commercial here for your conference in Chennai that you're coming to in November. So I'm just take a couple of minutes on that, and if there's any 1 or 2 questions left, I'll come back to that in just a minute. So I've taken back the screen, and I think you can see the website for WEEF 2019. This is the World Engineering Education Forum 2019. This is the 9th one. The main organizer of this is the International Federation for Engineering Education Societies, which is a global organization of societies of engineering education all over the world, and it's been around for more than 10 years. And I think this is going to be the 9th forum of this type. Almost 700-800 people from around the world get together to talk about all the exciting things to do related to transforming engineering education. And the theme for this particular one, this year it's in India, Chennai. Last year it was in Albuquerque, New Mexico. The previous year I forget where it was, but all over the world it moves around. And next year it's going to be in Cape Town, South Africa. This is the theme on this one is disruptive engineering education for sustainable development, which is on top of everybody's minds, obviously. 13th to 16th November, and there's a beautiful hotel in downtown Chennai, ITC Grand Chola, and the deadline for submission of abstracts has been extended. So if some of you have been seeing the website earlier, it was June 30th. We decided to extend it by a month, so you have plenty of time to think about it and submit abstracts. And there's more details in here as you go in there, and all the papers that have been accepted and reviewed will end up in the in the index citation indexed Scopus indexed Elsevier proceedings, and then we do have a for those of you who might not have visited India often enough and might be interested in doing some sightseeing, we do have some special tours which take you to the Taj Mahal immediately after the conference on the 16th, 17th, 18th, depends on how many days you want to spend. A couple of different packages, lots of information on here with information about the invited speakers such as Lisa will be there, and Bill Williams too from Portugal and others. Just want to encourage you folks to come join us, and I think it'll be a lot of fun. So really want to get to that, and so I guess with that I'm going to call it end. Do you have any last comments to make, Lisa?
No, just to say thank you all for tuning in, and it's been interesting. I haven't done one of these before, so it was an interesting exercise to do, and I look forward to meeting those of you in Chennai who are going to be there.
Okay, thank you very much, Lisa, and
good
night, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.